is a legend of one man who persuaded his friends to watch every Godzilla movie ever made. This world is on the brink of destruction. We need you now, Godzillavangelists! Godzillavangelists, a Geek Stew Network podcast, produced and hosted by Ryan Sargent, featuring Sam Schlenker and Joanna Brodecki. Okay, I got a question for you guys. What was everyone's painfully earnest childhood fantasy? Like, what universe did you want to be immersed in? Where did you want to go? Like, what escape did your imagination have when you were little?
There's a Snow White knockoff film called Happily Ever After that I was obsessed with. And it's not a Disney movie. And the description of it says, Happily Ever After, originally released as Snow White, the adventure continues in the Philippines. So I read that as Philippines was part of the title. Now I'm thinking maybe in the Philippines it just had a different name, but regardless, I like that. It was creepy, honestly. It was closer to the realm of Anastasia and the terrifying little creatures, and they had like a Rasputin-esque guy and all the little goblins were always like, hum. I totally wanted to live in that weird forest land.
That was your escape?
Joanna, I also have kind of a weird one where I wanted to be there, but I was also terrified of it because I was a Pee Wee Herman's Playhouse kid because my uncle in his infinite wisdom gifted me the VHS box set. I really wanted to be there and I thought it was so cool, but I was also horrified by all of the furniture talking and also because Paul Rubens.
But there's something exciting about the terror.
Exciting but unsettling is how I would describe it.
I was probably like 10, 11, and my escape when I was feeling blue, when I was feeling down after a day where I felt like I was weird and no one wanted to hang out with me, is I would just project, like I would just sit down and fantasize being like the coolest basketball player ever in the NBA and be like, yeah, I'll show them, look at this, look how sick I am at basketball, I'll show them. Like, meanwhile in real life I'm like just this goofy kid with kind of a bowl cut. Like Mike was really big for me.
You wanted to be like Mike.
Well, I wanted to be like Lil Bow Wow, and then by proxy, like Mike as well.
Mine is boring by comparison, but obvious. It was living on Monster Island, and it's a dream that comes true for Ichiro in today's movie, Godzilla's Revenge.
AKA...
Woo!
All monsters attack.
Wham, bang, crash! They pulverize everything.
Neither title is true.
Returning to us today as a guest is Mackenzie Marlowe, who you've already heard.
Hello!
Woo!
Stoked to be here.
We're all glad you're back. This movie was released in 1969 in Japan as All Monsters Attack. It got a brief release in the US in 1970 as Minya, Son of Godzilla, which is a title that actually makes sense.
Although voiced by a 35-year-old woman.
It tracks.
Anyways, continue.
The advertising campaign was actually honest about the kind of movie it was. It was like, everyone needs a friend. This kid has Godzilla's son. But as you can imagine, ticket sales were weak, so they withdrew it and put it out again with the title of Godzilla's Revenge, where it's made a bit more money.
And made no sense, that title.
Completely unrelated to the plot of this movie.
It's very technically true when he gets his revenge on Gamera at the very end.
Is it Godzilla's Revenge, though?
It's Godzilla's Revenge by proxy.
We'd need a good opening sequence setting up their background, you know? I didn't feel the tension going into the film enough, I would say.
Does anybody want to give their spoiler-free feelings about this movie before we get to the synopsis?
About 2 minutes into the film, I wrote, wow, I'm obsessed. I was so happy to be back to the Janis Joplin rock and roll vibes in the 60s. I was all amped, the terrible looking characters. I was ready for it. And then you introduce a tiny little boy in cute little outfit, and I was just ready to see what was going to happen from there.
If you remove just the freeze frames from this movie, it's like 25 minutes long. And then I guess you take out the stock footage.
I was going to say the stock footage too.
You have like a webisode of a movie.
A friendship between an old toy maker and a young latchkey kid. That's totally not suspicious at all.
Speaking of Pee-wee's Playhouse.
You're about to reignite a very stupid debate. When this movie came out on like collector's DVD for the first time, the Godzilla scholar who did the review made an offhand joke, which you can debate the taste of, about the toy maker being a pedophile.
Oh.
Well, people got in such a heat about it because some people were like, it's funny. Some people were like, it's not funny. Some people were like, it's not funny and it's also like doesn't make any sense.
I'm gonna stick up for him. Yeah, I like him.
I agree.
I think he's sweet.
I thought he was the great comedic ad.
I do question some of the toys he makes.
I want that hand that screams for the police and crawls away.
Yeah, what are the police supposed to do in that situation? Because that's not a turn and walk away. If he's designed a toy that is a severed hand that screams help police, like they're like, haha, nice toy, but like that's not the right response. But I don't know what the right response is.
Alright, here we go. Sound effects at the ready. Our story begins in the reality of 1969 Japan, where Godzilla is only fantasy and the streets are clogged with traffic and smoke.
Beep, 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 beep. Hey, get the hell out of here!
The young boy Ichiro walks home with his only friend Sachiko, but is bullied by the taller Gabara and his gang of bullies. We find out Ichiro is a latchkey kid since both his mother and father tend to work late into the night.
But his dad drives his train right by his house every afternoon.
He is cared for by an eccentric toy maker named Shinpei, who lives and works next door.
Help, police!
Ichiro's escape is dreaming about Monster Island, where he explores the strange jungles and witnesses a battle between Godzilla and some Kamacuras. While fleeing, he falls in a hole and is rescued by Minya, who can shrink to human size. What? The two become friends before Ichiro awakens and goes outside to play. After spotting his bullies, Ichiro runs into an abandoned factory where he picks up some machine parts and an abandoned driver's license. When he goes back home, he doesn't realize that the license belongs to a pair of hiding robbers that stole 50 million yen the day before. One of the robbers tracks Ichiro back home and finds his apartment. After dinner with Shinpei, Ichiro falls asleep and watches more epic Godzilla fights with Minya. The two of them are attacked by Minya's own monstrous version of Gabara, and the little monster loses badly in a fight. Ichiro is awakened again, this time by the robbers, who kidnap him back to the factory. As he is taken hostage, Ichiro has one more dream about Monster Island, where he uses wits and bravery to help Minya and Godzilla send Gabara packing. Learning from his dreams, Ichiro escapes the robbers and makes his way outside, where Shinpei has called the police. The robbers are captured, and Ichiro is celebrated as a hero.
Yay!
The end.
And then he bullies a helpless painter. The end.
And he ruins his leather jacket.
Also, not to jump ahead here, but you said his one and only friend, but she abandons him very quickly and willingly. When the bullies show up at the end, she's just like, "Oh, the bullies! I'm with them now." And he's like, "Oh, well, I don't need you anymore. I've learned courage."
I think she's just trying to get away from the painter, right?
At the end, they're all his friends, so she can be with them because they all think he's so cool now.
They formed a roving gang.
When you fight your bullies in slow motion, that's how you win them over.
She's like the Snow White to their seven dwarves.
We talked a little bit about the opening. There's actually two different opening songs, whether you're watching it in Japanese or the American version, but both of them are bangers. So I think you all saw the Japanese version, so let's talk about that one first.
so great.
It was truly Janis Joplin. It was a kid's song by Janis Joplin.
It's a little bit proto-punk. She's got that real harsh screaming.
And she's like, but it ain't easy being a monster. I was like, wow, I could see how 6-year-old children would love this.
Yeah, and the lyrics are like, smog, traffic, those are the real monsters.
So great. And then it was like, the burden is to live on Earth or something. And you're like, same, man.
They're like, why do we have to live on this earth? The underlying premise of many of the Godzilla films that I just like, they like got it across, you know?
What if the real monster island is just the planet Earth?
Whoa!
Damn, North America is Monster Island.
Am I Gabora?
I'm going to play a little bit of the American song for you. I remember I had a little like handheld tape recorder and I recorded the song off the TV so I could listen to it whenever I wanted.
Wow, piracy is a crime, Ryan.
Piracy, pollution, piracy is worse. This is a banger too.
Ryan, did you just flip out at this intro as a child?
Oh, I did.
That was awesome.
It was unknown what it was for many years because they incorrectly call it Monsters March. It is called crime fiction. It was just pulled from a library, but it sounds awesome. So this is the only Godzilla movie where Godzilla isn't real. So how do you all feel about that?
Wait, what do you mean?
He does not exist in the reality of this movie. He's a movie character.
Ryan, you realize it's the only movie he's actually not real? I don't know if you guys know this in the other films.
Did I say it wrong?
No, you just said he's not real in only this movie. The way of phrasing it, was confusing to my late night brain.
But Ryan, he is real. Godzilla's real. No, shut up.
I do believe in Godzilla. I do.
I know he's real, but in this movie, he's not real.
This is potentially because I just didn't pick up on it. I just assumed that in this world, Godzilla exists and this kid is obsessed with all the monsters and it's like a thing that happens, but he's in a Marvel movie. If we just cut to the middle of one of those like rando apartments in Atlanta passing for New York, like this is what would be happening.
Yeah, are we sure that the Godzilla we're seeing is his imagination? But I don't think that this kid lives in a world with no Godzilla.
Well, they have that line about gods, though. Like, parents have religion and children have monsters.
Yeah, but you could say the same thing about Power Rangers, and it doesn't mean he made them up.
I will admit there's a little bit of room for doubt there. I don't see why he would be real. All indication seems to be that, like, adults don't understand who the monsters are, and they treat them as kind of a joke or a fun thing for kids.
That's weirder than the alternative.
I totally agree. A lot of this is from a previous movie.
Yeah, that's a lot of stock footage.
Ugh, I don't like that, Ryan.
And they're really screwing with the rules of the universe here, and I don't like it.
Is it Gabara?
Gabara.
Gabara, I can believe just straight up doesn't exist and is purely a figment of his imagination.
Especially with that purple glowing top or whatever he had, that orange hair.
I kind of like him, but I just can't believe that this kid just made these very specific dream characters up out of the blue.
Sam, the imagination of a child is a very rich place to be.
Now, if he was dreaming about playing in the NBA...
Well, no, so that's the thing. I think the Godzilla movies exist in this universe, but not an actual being called Godzilla.
Wait, so he's a fan?
Exactly.
Oh, that's extra weird.
We're falling down the rabbit hole here.
To go back to the lyrics of that song, I've always been very struck as an adult with how somber and desolate this movie starts to feel when you like don't take it at face value and you like start to dig into it and like think about it. Ichiro, he's got a lot of sadness in his life. It gives this movie like a very weird, unique tone compared to some of the other ones.
He's like weirdly chipper and okay with it though. He's like, I know who I am and I will just have my imagination.
Well, that's the only way he can make it on the mean streets of whatever city he lives in.
I think it's Nagasaki.
You gotta have the chipper attitude, otherwise what do you have?
You have vacuum tubes.
Yeah.
What is he using those tubes? Is he giving to the toy maker?
I think he's using it to build his made-up machine, his Monster Island radio.
So he needs real vacuum tubes for that.
That kid can fall asleep on the spot, too.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah, I can't even sleep on a plane, and this kid can sleep while a grown man is holding a knife to his throat.
To his face, yes. Lots of brandishing knives
Yeah.
at kids in this movie.
I will just, I'll just hop right in and say I liked the movie. So if that means anything, I liked it, and I hear what you're saying, and I'm sure that fans some people are not huge fans of the fights being just lifted from other movies, which fair enough. It seems like it's lower budget, but I to be consistent with my opinion on some of the other ones, I like when movies don't have all the resources and try to make themselves more interesting in other ways. I am going to stand by, I haven't been a big Ishiro Honda fan through this run. I liked him early, and then I felt like he was just, these movies were just kind of he was kind of phoning it in. The other directors we've watched, I thought, made more interesting Godzillas. And this one, it was like, suddenly when you take away all his resources, he gets inventive again. I thought it was better shot. I thought that all the stuff with just silent kid walking through spaces was like, it made him focus on how to shoot things in interesting ways. The kid was great. This was a main character who was a character. He wasn't just man tracking the monster, take a photo. He was a guy. He was a kid. I was a fan. I liked it.
That's true. Ichiro has one of the best arcs of any character in a Godzilla movie for whatever else you can say. I'll get to my opinion at the judgment. I gotta hold on to at least some of the good stuff. But I agree that Ichiro Honda's direction is really interesting. He's actually going for something. It doesn't quite come together because of the restrictions he had to make it under, but it's like he's relieved to be able to make a movie that's not really a science fiction movie, that's like an inner city drama about a kid.
Yeah, it's that, and I think it's better edited in a lot of ways because they had to rely on editing. I thought that it's just tighter. I mean, some of those later dream sequence Monster Island things go a little long, but like early on, I was like, wow, this is a more modern movie that we're getting right to it.
It has a really strong perspective, which I think at least the more recent Godzilla movies, that's kind of the issue that a lot of them have, or like big monster movies where you're like, I don't really know who's, we're kind of this like omniscient viewer skipping around to a cast of characters who are sometimes better fleshed out than other times, and it was oddly refreshing to just have it from a one person's point of view the entire time and follow this kid. And the kid is great. He's like really good.
So cute and expressive and fantastic.
What's so weird is he disappeared off the face of the earth like so many times. Fans in Japan tried to track him down and he's never said anything about the movie. Hopefully he's doing okay and just doesn't want to talk about it. Even as a kid in a different country in rural space 30 years later, when I was watching this, it still felt very relatable and understandable to me. Like it just felt like really good about showing things from a kid's perspective. So yeah, it's like a direct connection to childhood for me.
That's how I felt right from the start of the film, like the song and the very bluntness of the song of like, smog is bad, we love the monsters. I was like, okay, this is a kid's film that we're about to be watching. Like that's more who it's for, whether they marketed it that way. But like also I do these Zoom calls once a week with my 2-3-year-old nephews and my 6-year-old niece, and like the topic always gets to dinosaurs 5 minutes in, and then once it's on dinosaurs it does not get off dinosaurs. So right away I was like, oh, they would love this film. They would be totally obsessed with it. And so was it perfect as an adult, viewing it as an adult film? No, I would say that it was repetitive in a lot of spots, but for a child looking to see some monster fights, I think it did the job.
It was my favorite for a few years as a kid because of the fantasy of being on Monster Island and because there were so many fights.
Did they market it as a kid's film?
Oh, yeah.
Then who's hating on it?
I can see where the criticisms would be. It's not like I'm just like incredulous and like, who would ever dislike this? But I think that it does some things well that some of the others don't. And you know what? They tried a perspective that wasn't just it's another big group fight with a bunch of monsters, independent of the humans, and the humans are all watching it. It's a different way in, and that's cool.
And I think each character in the film, obviously the robbers were the robbers, but I feel like the toy maker neighbor, even like when they're talking about Godzilla and she's like, I gotta stick up for myself or he'll get mad at me. Like Godzilla had this little like admonishing dad personality going on. I just thought all of that was lovely little additions compared to sometimes what we see where everything can be very flat.
I thought that it kind of felt like how Kyle Chandler felt in Godzilla vs. Kong, where they were only able to get Godzilla on set for like 2 days in this movie.
And to schedule him out at the beginning of the movie.
Just take some old reels. It's fine.
There's stuff for kids' movies that never goes out of style, right? Like bumbling villains that are not actually that dangerous and a kid learning to stand up to his bully. Like, those are all great things that are tropes for a reason, and like they're fun, they're great.
And like him, I always get confused because she's voiced by a 35-year-old woman being like, we don't lie like humans. I'm like, oh, there's a little kid lie.
Yeah, Minya talking is very strange.
Very bizarre. Amazing. I love the downsizing and upsizing. Also, perfectly cropped. Like, love just zooming in on Minya's crotch.
That's true. It's one in a long history of Godzilla crotch shots.
Amazing.
I was just listening to some of our older episodes, and we've talked about a crotch shot surprisingly often.
The last episode I was on, there was quite a bit of undercarriage, so this was tame by comparison.
That's true. Would you guys like to hear what Minya sounded like in the American version?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It is astounding.
Hi, Minya.
Hey, come on over here. I won't hurt you.
You won't?
No, don't be afraid.
Thanks for saving me.
Why'd you come here?
I just wanted to see you.
Your folks will get kind of worried, won't they?
Wow, that really makes me prefer the 35-year-old female.
I don't know why you would say that. I'm just a regular old Minya.
He's just my dad. Like, how old are you?
Just model.
Why is he Southern?
Why is he so old?
Yeah, I feel like this is almost becoming more of a secret now because Toho is not being very good about releasing the American versions anymore.
Yeah, I feel like the Japanese versions are better though. Like usually I accidentally watch just whichever one comes up first on my Roku, and I'm usually happy with the Japanese version. Ryan, so you grew up thinking that Minya went from having no voice in the first film to having this voice.
This weird Southern hick Barney, the dinosaur.
That's what I was subjected to. Even as a child, I didn't enjoy that.
Now thinking about it, I'm like, why did Barney sound like he sounded? Like it worked, but like, why did they pick that?
Oh, there's a world that I would escape to as a really little kid, was Barney.
When me and my sister would play Godzilla and Minya, she would always do like the baby type voice. So she was not doing the list kind of voice the whole time. As funny as that would have been.
Is it controversial to have Minya talk?
Oh yeah, tell us what they're mad about and we'll judge if they're right to be mad or if they should shut their trapels.
The big ones I hear over and over again is it's all stock footage.
Not true. It's only 40%. Also, it's not stock footage if it's from the previous movies. I call it borrowing from yourself.
Were any of them like director's cut version of stock footage? Because they were doing that thing again where like the spider zoom in was pretty weird.
They were re-edited, and in a few cases they had to do like weird mats to cover story elements in the old movie. When Godzilla fights the spider, like Minya's on the ground covered in web in the original fight, so they had to like mat rocks over Minya's webbed body because obviously he was over there watching the fight.
That's a brand new sentence no one's ever said in the history of mankind.
Not true. Somebody said it in Toho's special effects department in 1969.
All right. Go back to making toys, you pervert.
That's it. We have room from the silly string budget from the last movie that we can use.
Yeah, Sam, do you have terrible flashbacks anytime there's silly string in a movie?
Or is it only the larva?
No, the larvae are more problematic to me. I will say that I don't like Minya still, but somehow having Minya have a voice and it being like a child's imagination softened the blow for me.
Agreed.
I wasn't as rattled by Minya's horrible appearance.
I wasn't so totally incensed. I still didn't fully get the father-son thing. The friend thing.
I think it's his mouth.
Or his eyes. Or his weird stomach body.
I'm so sad, Joanna. When we first watched the Minya, you were on board with me.
Was I?
Absolutely. Go back and listen to it. Well, that's big complaint number 2 is very Minya-centric, and most of the fandom hates Minya. which makes me upset. Number 3 is it's oriented towards a younger audience than any other Godzilla movie, and nerds hate feeling like children.
Okay, so it's a sensitive topic, but it is geared for children.
They feel upset that this movie is not for a refined connoisseur adult. I think those are the big 3. Sometimes people like really get into the weeds and say like, oh, Gabra is also a stupid monster.
Well, that's totally legit. That's the most right complaint that has been put forth so far.
A totally ridiculous monster.
True, but he's supposed to be like an imaginary ogre.
Exactly. Like, it gets a lot of leeway from being created by a child.
Yeah, he was like Dragon Tales mixed with a cat.
Oh, I wrote down that he reminded me of Carrot Top.
Yes, all of the above. He brings much to mind.
By the way, remarkable thing about Gabra, weirdest tail of any monster. He has this little nub tail.
I liked that his Carrot Top glowed. They saved that. When that happened, I really thought like I was at a Chuck E. Cheese show.
That's the perfect comparison. Like, this exists within the universe of Charles Entertainment Cheese.
Yeah, my sister and I, when he would put his hand on Minya and like the electric bolts would come down, we called that the electric wig.
Was Minya someone wearing a suit?
A great performer, I think. But yes, he's billed as Marchand the Dwarf. He played Minya in all 3 of these.
What were some of your guys' favorite fight moments? My favorite were whenever they were playing with rocks, when they were playing soccer with the rocks, when they were playing volleyball with the rocks in the water.
So Ryan, was that rock fight entirely taken from Ibira?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't remember that rock fight being that gratuitous or that long.
It's actually shorter than the one in Nabira.
Really fascinating. But yes, I'm a big fan of monsters playing volleyball with rocks. I feel like we haven't had one of those in a bit.
Like a monster summer camp film.
This isn't really a fight moment, but when Minya, like, can't use the atomic breath, but he, like, can blow, like, vape rings of atomic smoke.
So cute and so creepy at the same time when he's, like, rubbing his belly to charge it up. And then he's like, 1-0.
Gabra's just like, you're an idiot.
I thought it was strange that Minya either had, like, the, I'm Minya, blah, 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 or the, like, whatever his weird Barney voice is. But then whenever he would fight, he suddenly wouldn't talk and he would just resort to squeaking and being like suddenly a thing that doesn't talk and is just like,
I guess perhaps they thought it would be a bridge too far if he spoke while he was giant, although I don't know why that was their dividing line.
That would be hilarious if they pitched it down and he had a super deep voice when he was really big.
You, Gabra, I have gained power and size.
Ryan, when you were a child, did you get so excited at the part where they're like naming all the monsters at the beginning? They're like, Godzilla! Manda! Like, were you just screaming along with them?
Yeah, when he's like exploring Monster Island, oh, absolutely.
And one of them's just a bird. Just a normal bird.
Why did that bird think it could defeat Godzilla? Why did it do that?
I've talked about this before, because that's a scene from Ibira that was clipped here. But I had a weird obsession with the condor as a kid. I would like draw so many pictures of it. I don't know why I liked it so much.
Really? He was in there for like 2 minutes and then he died.
I know, the weakest monster Godzilla ever fought.
Condor is the Boba Fett of the Godzilla franchise. Condor shows up for a second, but you know he's cool. He's got confidence.
One thing I was very amused by was the 1969 slang. They kept saying things like, "You did it, baby!" Like very Austin Powers.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's tough when you say that to a child who's only a few years off being a baby. It's a little confusing. Are you saying baby to him like you baby? Or is it like, yeah, baby?
Yeah, baby. Which was your favorite, like, slow-mo cut back and forth part?
I loved his running from Gabra in the jungle. Like all the dream imagery was like spot on.
That was an incredible part. And the bully fight at the end, I was like, yes, I do a fight like this between kids anytime. This is amazing.
On the one hand, I liked it, and it was a cool effect. On the other hand, you know that they had to do that because those kids just sucked at fighting. Nor do you want kids fighting, you know what I mean? It's not like they're getting stuntmen for these children.
Right.
I can imagine that was a choice. They were like, how do we make this fight between two kids pretending to hit each other be cool? And the answer is, it kind of works.
It captures a mood.
I was there for any of the cuts. Looking back, at any point in the film, any point throughout it, I was like, we're doing it again, let's do it again. Hello.
Ishiro Honda wasn't a snap zoom man before this, really, was he?
I can think of a couple.
I mean, again, you have to, if you're going to reuse footage so much, you got to do something to it. This was my favorite Honda directing job. It was his magnum opus of personal performance for me.
Yeah, it leaned into the like quirkiness too. It's like an example of like, hey, we know which film we're in and we're gonna lean into that, I guess, which I feel like sometimes they do very well in these worlds.
Yes. And you know what? He agrees with you because Honda said this was probably his favorite of the sequels that he directed. And he seems to have made it very deliberately. Like, a lot of people have pointed out how Ichiro and his father are never in the same shot. And he reshot the scene of Godzilla teaching Minya how to use his nuclear breath to make him look sterner and more impatient. Because that scene exists in Son of Godzilla, and it's like exactly the same, except for how Godzilla acts. But he chose to spend money to refilm it, so he's like trying to say something about dads and their kids. I'm not sure what. Maybe just trying to reflect like how he grew up. Kids today, they have it so easy. Or maybe not. Or maybe he's empathizing.
We used to have to walk to school across Monster Island, uphill both ways.
The falling aspects too, like when he was falling into the big hole, when Minya was falling to jump down onto the log at the end, they always just lasted like probably 5 seconds longer than I would have expected them to. Also very, very fun.
Yeah, the landing on that first fall, Ichiro's fall, where he just lands gently, that was the best. We both laughed.
Like I said, the perfect dream logic. Like, it feels like a dream you would have as a kid.
Speaking of, one of my other favorite moments, apart from the toy hand, it is when he is woken up from like either the first or second dream by the guy, one of the robbers, putting his arms around him, and in the dream it's just like a dude in a full plant costume.
Oh yeah.
I love that so much. I love the live plant man grabbing him out of nowhere.
That scene is legitimately horrifying.
It is really scary.
They've broken in his apartment and taken this kid. Not good. Which of course they take it down a notch when the robber is later like, well, I'm not going to kill him, of course, because what would that accomplish?
Well, that's where they went wrong. I mean, they could have gotten away with all of it.
They could have.
But someone had to grow a conscience.
You're right, Mac, about like the timeless tropes. He even sprays goop at him, for this case from a fire extinguisher, but you always have that in those kids movies.
Spraying the fire hydrant was an added level of clever, though, where because we knew that Minya's whole thing was learning how to atomic breath. Like, we've seen that in previous movies. So you see that in this one, and you're like, oh, he's imagining this. It's just because that's Minya's thing. And then for that to be paid off with him doing his own version of atomic breath to the guys, that was a genuine surprise for me. Where I was like, oh, guys, this is good. It's really good.
They were thinking, those writers.
Now the ending, I'm not so sure what he learned from all this. That was a little confusing.
Same.
The ending is definitely dark, but also is definitely not supposed to be like downbeat. Like, it ends on like an upbeat, happy note, but there are like moments where it feels very sad, like the mom crying because she knows nothing is gonna change, and like him running away from his dad and leaving him to like clean up his mess. So like, is it a happy ending or not? I'm curious to hear your opinion.
Well, I thought it totally was for him because, it was from his perspective and he's like, I'm on top of the world now. I think in terms of the like fighting your bully to overcome your bully, I don't know that would be like the narrative that would be told in a kid's story today. It would be like, just be yourself, violence, But in 1969, I was like, maybe that was the way to go about it, to just fight your bully to overcome him. I thought the paint part wasn't fully necessary, but at the same time, I was like, he is like a mischievous, kind of spunky kid in his own right. So him doing it kind of made sense.
Except that it seemed like they were daring him to do that because it was mean. They were like, oh yeah, I dare you to honk the thing because it'll cause that guy to get injured and like, get paint all over him. And so at the end, for him to be like, look at me, I'm the bully now, was a little weird. And then I didn't expect the parents to get roped in. It kind of didn't even need it. Didn't need the parents at the end. It's just, he's now a latchkey kid with a little confidence, and that probably would have been enough. So yeah, I was just a little confused with him torturing that poor old painter.
Maybe if he had just honked the horn, but the painter was like, ha ha ha, I got a lot of Scooby-Doo vibes as well during a lot of this film, like, you kids, which makes sense, kind of like the timing of it, but maybe if the man on the ladder had just been like, get away from my bike, you kid, and not fallen off, it would have felt less mean.
It seems like you don't want him to be friends with the bullies. That's, I think, what it is. If they were like, wow, you're cool, you should hang out with us. And he's like, I got a monster island to go to. In my dreams, peace. And then walks away, and then without even looking, like, he just turns over his shoulder and just honks the horn with his back still turned to them. And then, like, gives like a finger guns to the painter, who's like, oh, nice one.
No, I hate him now.
And then he walks away.
And then he puts on his Matthew Broderick headphones and starts singing.
Alternative pitch, because this is what I really wanted to happen. Godzilla and Minya show up in real life in the movie at the end. And the bullies are like, oh no. And then it just hard cuts out to that song. Minya.
Fire the monster stuck on the earth.
That would have been great.
I don't know, I thought he was still gonna overcome them, but then there would be something else, and then he, they would be like, you're stupid for, like, being into monsters or whatever, and then they show up, and they're like, oh no!
Again, like, very deliberate choice, but I don't know what it means across this cultural gulf of space and time. That's my one question for Ishiro Honda. What was the ending of All Monsters Attack supposed to mean? Speaking of somber, I don't know why I chose to close on this. Maybe there's another point we can come to after this, but we've talked about Eiji Tsuburaya before, and he was the special effects supervisor from the very beginning, helped come up with all these effects, set up the Toho special effects department. And he'd gradually been reducing his oversight over time as he founded a TV company and all this other cool stuff. He was very sick during the production of this movie, so Ishiro Honda directed the special effects himself, and it ended up, he got the credit out of honor, but it was his last credit because he would die. So this is the sort of end of Tsuburaya's legacy here. I just had to drop that in.
I'm glad he got the honorable mention.
I feel like you feel it. I think there is something missing with those monster fights. And some of it's probably budget, but you do feel it. You're like, oh yeah, there's someone who probably would have made these more awesome.
I mean, it's kind of the reason this movie got made this way, because they were desperately trying to catch up and ended up having to use a lot of stock footage and have a lot of scenes outside of the monster world. So it was the sort of circumstances that crafted this. But as we talked about, not all bad. All right, would we like to come back to the inventor, since we didn't quite cover everything with him?
I loved his car bit. Ichiro, anytime he's by that car that's for sale, he's always dicking around with it. He's pulling up the antenna. He's beep beep. He's hopping on top of it. So that piece of his personality is there, when it comes out in the ending. He's not a total little angel child.
That's true.
He's got his little spunk, and he pokes fun at people and the adults, so I feel like it a bit holds true. But the car bit, when his neighbor was like, I know this car. Where do I know this car? It's my car! I loved. And I also loved how many times in the movie they were just remember, the plot is there are people that stole 50,000 yen.
Yeah.
So many times, they probably said it 37 times of did you guys see those two men that stole 50,000 yen? You'd think they would have a better plan.
So true.
That's true. Why'd they just end up hiding out in this old factory? Where were they gonna go?
And eat cigarettes.
Oh man, that sukiyaki looked so good though, when they had dinner together.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All of the food scenes in this, and when they went to that bar, he shows up at the bar where the policemen are hanging out until they can do another sweep or whatever police do. I want to go eat there. That place looks awesome.
Also, that kid being I don't want you to be poor, not eating the beef at first. He was a funny kid.
Oh yeah, that was very poignant.
I know, what a burn. No, I mean, I feel like the toy maker it's a very innocent relationship. I think clearly that was their intent, but it didn't bother me. I think we are cynical and like to make jokes about it. But no, I thought it was like a fun relationship, and you know, he's kind of like the mentor, sort of. But he also like understands him when his parents aren't around, right? Like he doesn't really have any friends, so the toy maker is like the guy who he can talk to, and he genuinely wants, you know, our main kid's opinion on the toys because he's, you know, trying to make them fun for kids. It's actually like a really nice little metaphor for this movie as a whole. Is like, it's, you know, it's appealing to kids, and that's kind of what's great about it.
That's a nice way to wrap it up perfectly.
And when he stands up for him, when he's like, you know, when he's like, adults have God and children have monsters, I thought that was so precious.
It was, and then I love that everyone around them is like, oh yes, very smart.
see,
Yes,
yeah.
Oh, gonna write that quote down.
Write that down.
Man, I never thought about it that way before. You're right.
The simplicity of the film too, I feel like in any Disney movie, it's like, and the mother is dead, and the father is dead. And in this one, it was like, no, his parents don't not like him. They just have to work a lot. So he's got this other guy that takes care of him, and that's that. Like, it didn't have to be this whole big, you know, dramatic kind of setup. He was just living his little life.
Simple yet effective. And with that, let us go to the judgments. If this is the first episode you're listening to, welcome, and let us explain our rating system. It is our holy duty as Godzillavangelists to assign each movie its proper place in the Godzilla afterlife, whether it belongs in Godzilla Heaven, Purgatory, or Hell. So this time, it's Godzilla's Revenge up to bat. Let's start with Sam, because you tipped your hand the most, so you will be the least surprising.
I haven't made up my mind until, I guess, right now I have to, but I'm torn between Purgatory and Heaven. Because on the one hand, I like it. I feel like probably in the range of ones we've watched, it's closer to the middle than the top. So that's why I'm hesitating. But I watched it and thought, I like it. You know what? Yeah. For Honda, because I feel bad for being more critical of his movies, I'm going to put it in Heaven. I think it has its faults, but I was engaged and I wasn't bored very often in it either. That's something. Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was interesting, and it was a nice change of pace. So I'm gonna go Heaven. It's not a strong Heaven candidate, but I'll stand by it.
All right, Mac.
Yeah, I think over the course of this podcast, I've also talked myself into placing it in Heaven because there's just something really genuine about it that I like. It's like a Happy Meal toy of a movie, you know? Where if you're a kid, like, I'm sure that this would be so awesome to go see. You know, like, when I got to go see the first Pokemon movie that came out, that's like what it's reminding me of, is that kind of like very simple. I'm sure my mom was like, oh boy, I loved it, and I think that it has some of that same kind of like spirit, and yeah, I really liked it, so I would put it in Heaven.
I agree a lot with you, Sam, where like objectively I think the case is Purgatory, even considering the audience. But just in terms of like remembering what it was like to be a kid watching this and how much I liked it, that sort of like re-energizes it in my eyes, and I'm like, okay, like I could see how this was so effective and still could be. And from that perspective, I give it Heaven, because it is like, if you traditionally put this at the bottom of your list, fellow fans, like, just think about what it was like to be 6 years old and watch monster movies, and you will find a way to enjoy it. And so, yes, I'll put it in Heaven, too.
I will also be putting it in Heaven. Yay!
Straight flush.
Because I think, again, right off the bat, it was like, okay, this is going to be a kid's film. And I think they set that up pretty clearly, and then I think they executed it very well. Like, the tropes were simple and straightforward, but they were there. And I thought the characters that they built up, like even the relationship between Minya and Ichiro, like I got it, and it was clear Minya and Godzilla. I just think they, like, even with his parents, though they weren't in the film much, I like, you know, got who they were and the setup for them. And I think the parts for me where I was like, okay, he's fighting a lot of monsters. I know it's Attack All Monsters, but this is a lot of, we're fighting for 17 minutes now. Still, for the audience of like my nephews or my niece, that is the shit that they would eat up and totally be obsessed with. So you get why that's in there for so long. And I just thought it was dang precious. I loved the little boy. And I almost wish, Ryan, that we had like watched this earlier in our Godzilla journey, because I feel like it really framed for me and helped me understand like where the fandom base comes from. Like seeing Godzilla through the eyes of this child on screen and being a child watching that, I was like, oh, okay, this totally 1,000,000% makes sense.
Oh, this is the one all the fans hate.
They're just bitter. But I would show it to my little nieces and nephews and watch it again with them happily. That makes it a heaven for me.
It's a good way to sum it up. And yeah, if you have kids in your life and they're not already jaded because you've shown them all the Marvel movies, show them this.
My nephew, who's younger too, he's fluent in Japanese, and I was like, wow, I could share this movie with James and he wouldn't even need the subtitles.
And then you share the American goofy voice version just to spite him.
Godzilla says I gotta fight my own battle.
Toho, we're not in Kansas anymore.
Oh, jeez. Ryan, so I feel like we've watched a couple of these that have been often cited as some of the weakest ones, and I feel like we and also you have liked those ones especially a lot. Thinking of this one certainly, but Smog Monster and Ibira as well.
And Son of Godzilla, at least on my part.
Oh, right. I completely forgot that exists. Is that one considered one of the weakest too?
Yeah.
That one I can confirm.
So I think there's many different ways you could define the worst. If we're going off most incompetently made, we haven't watched that one yet. It's Godzilla versus Megalon. If we're going off most boring, it's Godzilla versus Space Godzilla, which we also haven't covered yet.
What is your biggest cellar dweller of these movies?
We got a long journey ahead of us.
I think, honestly, overall worst combination of incompetence, cheapness, and boringness is Raids Again for me. It was literally rushed into production like a few months after, and nothing's right about Raids Again. But if it's your favorite, see, that's the thing. If it's your favorite, great. Just don't slam the Godzilla movies you don't like, because they're somebody else's favorite. He means so many different things.
There's something for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are 8 million of these movies.
I liked this movie better than the Millie Bobby Brown original one.
Just replace her with this kid rocking the short shorts and like ball cap.
Yeah.
Oh my god, put some little high socks and a little backpack.
We didn't talk about his outfit, Joanna, but it is awesome.
And then that girl with her little jumper, and then when she went through the fence, she had little floofy bloomers on. Oh, wait, also one tiny final comment. Did anyone catch how small the fridge was in the kitchen when he got his snack? Oh my god, so tiny. And I was like, this is post the era of ice boxes, I think.
I love their apartment.
Yeah.
It's such a, like, and set design is great,
Yeah.
and especially how they film a lot of stuff. I mean, Sam touched on this, but they film a lot of stuff from, like, low angles, like, from under the table, and it's just, like, really gorgeous, actually.
Yeah,
it looks
really,
great.
The set design, it was great.
It's
The
one
set
thing to
design.
shoot a scene of 60 people in a control room, commanding the thing to track the monster, and it's another thing to shoot the apartment of a toy maker who takes in a local kid and is kind of this like whimsical, like that is, I mean, that's a more fun production design assignment to me, but yeah, that's I think there's something cool there. I think they really put their energy in smaller things and did them really well.
This reminds me of a story where on Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Steven Spielberg was like watching when Truffaut came on to the big box canyon set for the first time, and like watching him, waiting to see his reaction, but he was completely nonplussed. But then when he brought him onto the set for just like a tiny scene where like Melinda Dillon's character is in a hotel room, Truffaut walks in and is like, "Now this is a set." I didn't want to do the French accent.
That rocks.
All right, I got a fan message here. I think you're gonna love this one, Sam. This was a comment from John Weber on YouTube, commenting on our Godzilla versus James Bond minisode.
What?
It was extremely long and thorough, so I'm just gonna read a bit, but I'm gonna share the whole thing with Sam, so I can get his full feedback. I'll send it back to you, John. But here's part of it, and it's a long part. This was a lot of fun to listen to, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about each of the movies after listening to this one. It's kind of unfair for the comparisons. You guys only did the one you had watched up to until this point, but I thought just for fun, I thought I'd leave some of my own. First off, I'd go with From Russia with Love, pairing with Mothra vs. Godzilla, as they are popular quintessential follow-ups, and yet didn't move into the fully formed formula that would dominate the franchise and a lot of the popular consciousness moving forward. Even though he's still fighting another monster, Godzilla is still portrayed as an antagonist, and a walking representation of the atomic bomb, while From Russia with Love is a much more stripped-down Cold War spy thriller as opposed to a giant save-the-world plot, with the gadgets that are there being more low-key and markedly more realistic. And he goes on for many more comparisons, but what do you think of this one?
Had we done Mothra versus Godzilla yet?
Yes.
So we just compared it to a different one. Did we say Goldfinger?
I think we did say Goldfinger, because it was like the cementing of the formula, whereas he thinks it's more like the step before.
I'm going to agree with that. I think that's an astute observation, and you're probably more right than we were. However, it would be a better comparison if the opening of the movie was Godzilla getting strangled by someone's watch wire, and then they rip off Godzilla's mask, and it's actually Gabara. No, that's very nice, and I'm glad that we do need to revisit these at some point and do a part 2 of that.
Well, there you have it. It's true, we got to do a sequel to that mini-sode eventually, and thank you, John. We really appreciate that. I promise that we're going to get back to you on the full breakdown. If you would like to have your message read on the show, please send us an email, leave a YouTube comment, or best of all, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That helps the most, but anything you can do to interact with us, or share it with a friend who might like it, or a family member, just like, we love it when you share the podcast, or send us a message, or leave us a review. So please do that. Are there any parting thoughts on Godzilla's Revenge?
I had fun.
It's a fun movie.
It's a tight 1 hour and 9-minute film.
And
Much
it
appreciated.
still almost feels long.
It does still kind of feel long.
Come at us, fandom. No, legitimately. I'll walk back the joke and issue a legitimate request. If you have stuck with us this long and aren't just a rando who wants to yell at us, I would love to hear your reasons why you think this is a bad movie. Like, not just like something that's just for kids, but why it's bad. If you have that, send it to us. Next time we'll be back with Godzilla versus Gigan. And in the meantime, everybody, keep spreading the word of Godzilla. Godzillavangelists is produced by me, Ryan Sargent, with support from my friends Joanna Brodecki and Sam Schleicher. All our incredible music is composed by Robert Mai, and our wonderful artwork is drawn by Cassidy Stone. This episode was edited by the ever-capable Julia Waldman. Special thanks to our families, friends, and the talented artists who made the movies that we talked about today. Godzillavangelists is a satirical, critical work, not affiliated or endorsed by Toho, Legendary Pictures, or anyone behind the Godzilla series. Visit our website at GodzillaVangelists.com We're also on Twitter at GodzillaCast and Instagram at Godzillavangelists. If you prefer to listen to us online, we have a YouTube channel. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you join us again next time. In the meantime, keep spreading the word of Godzilla.